Hey everybody, it's Lon.TV, and it's time once again for your weekly wrap-up. And if you've been following my bandwidth woes over the last couple of years, they are now resolved because I finally got the Comcast Gigabit Pro service up and running, and we're going to do a little review of it in this week's wrap-up. So let's get to it. Now, as a recap, the Comcast Gigabit Pro service is different than their regular gigabit offering. So if you have Comcast Gigabit in your area, typically it's a gigabit down on their coax cables and 35 megabits up. And that's a pretty fast connection. Unfortunately, where I live, they don't offer that connection. And for me, I needed faster upload speeds. And the best they could do for me at my location was 12 megabits per second upstream, which for a lot of folks is fine. But for me, where I'm uploading a 2 or 3 gigabyte video 4 or 5 times to different platforms, it was something that was really starting to cost me time and money, and I needed to find a faster way to get those files uploaded. And unfortunately, there was no other option other than Gigabit Pro, and it's going to cost me a good amount of money a month, about $300 a month. But it's something that is going to dramatically increase my efficiency and already has. And for me, it's money well spent. But again, it's not going to be for everybody. And it's also not something everybody can get because you have to be in the right spot in order for this to work for Comcast to hook you up. So for me, there was a fiber splice point at the end of the road. They were able to run a fiber optic cable here from the house to that point, and I'm in. So far, so good, and as you'll see, the speeds are pretty spectacular. And you don't have to worry about bandwidth caps on this plan. They are giving you unlimited data, which is good because you could blow through a data cap probably in about a half hour or so, given the speeds that we have here. Now, on Friday morning, the Comcast guys rolled up to finish up the connection. They installed the Juniper switch that interfaces with the network. I'll show you that switch in a minute. And they also ran a bunch of tests. It wasn't all that interesting to watch, so I didn't videotape any of it. But if you go back into some of the other videos in this series, you can see the fiber splicing process and the installation that went on over the last couple of weeks to get the service installed here at the house. It was pretty cool. So let's go over to the equipment closet now and see what we got added to the mix. And I do apologize in advance for my lack of cable management. One of these days, I'll get it taken care of. Let's jump into the closet. All right, let's take a look and see what they brought in on Friday. This is the Juniper switch that they installed. And this is the same switch you would see at a college or a large business. It's really a pretty heavy-duty piece of industrial gear here, and it's got redundant power supplies, as you can see. Now, the red lights on here are normal because those ports are not in use. There's actually only 3 ports we're using on this. We've got 2 fiber ports there on the right, and then we have an Ethernet connection here on the left. Now, the yellow fiber connection here is the one that goes back out to the street. And what's crazy is that the signal coming out of the Juniper here, my light signal, is traveling 5 or 6 miles, maybe even more than that, to the Comcast head end. I basically have a direct connection between the 2 points, and I'll show you a picture of that head end in a minute. And then the orange fiber cable next to it is my connection to the router. So the fiber comes in from Comcast on the right, it goes out on the left, and we have it interfaced now with the SFP Plus port on the UDM Pro router that we talked about in the prior video. This router came in free of charge from Ubiquiti, by the way. And you need a fast router to handle the traffic because most consumer routers have a really hard time going to even a gigabit, let alone 2. This one can handle, I think, about 7 or 8 gigabits of internet speed. So I think we should be in good shape for a while here. Incidentally, the connection to Comcast is running at a potential of 10 gigabits per second. So if I ever wanted more bandwidth in the future, I'm sure they could dial it in for me without having to run any more cable. And we're only using basically 1 pair of fiber here. And I have essentially, I think, 2 or 3 more pairs that are coming into the house. So we've got a lot more potential here if we ever wanted to go further than that. The Ethernet connection here is something that I'm not using at the moment. This is the gigabit link. So we have 2 gigabits on the fiber and then 1 gigabit on this disconnected Ethernet right now. And what's funny is as part of the deal, they let you, or they rent to you, and you have no choice in the matter, this Nighthawk router to connect up on the gigabit leg. So I can probably maybe set up a separate little network or something, and I haven't yet figured out exactly what I'm going to do with that gigabit leg here. and I really went from having not enough bandwidth to having more bandwidth than I know what to do with. Let's take a look now and see how fast it is. All right, let's do a speed test right now of that 2 gigabit connection. I'm going to start it here on my router. This is the built-in speed tester on the Wi-Fi gear. And as you can see here, we're doing about 1.7 to 1.8 gigabits per second. I found that I'm often maxing out the different servers that I'm connecting to. So sometimes I get the full 2 gigs down, other times it's a little bit short of that. But I don't think that's the connections problem. I think it's actually what I'm connecting to. But as you can see here, at least to the Wi-Fi server, we're getting faster speeds up than we are down. And either way, we've just got a ton of bandwidth here. And I know a lot of folks were curious about whether or not you could use the 1 gig and the 2 gig at the same time and get the aggregate speed out of both. So I did run a test a little bit earlier from speedtest.net on the 1 gig connection and the Wi-Fi router on the other. And as you can see, we're getting pretty much the aggregate of both connections simultaneously here. I did notice a little bit of a drop-off on the upload when I ran that test, but again, it could have been something going on with the Wi-Fi server at the time that I was running the test, but I am definitely exceeding the 2 gigs total here, so I think you will definitely see the aggregate of both the 2 and the 1 if you can figure out a way to route your traffic appropriately. Unfortunately, the Wi-Fi router that I have, the UDM Pro, only really allows kind of a failover relationship between 2 active WAN connections. You can't route from one device to a specific WAN port just yet. So at some point, I'll probably enable that if they update it in the firmware. But for now, again, that 1 gig connection, I'll just have to figure out something else to do with for the time being. And for some more real-world examples, here is a YouTube upload that I was doing, my typical one, about 1.5 gigs to 2 gigabytes. It was going in a matter of about a minute or so versus the 45 minutes to an hour it typically takes on my connection. So that was a nice uptick in performance. But you will find, like this Steam thing here, that not all services are going to be allowing you to make use of the full amount of bandwidth you have available. So for example, when I was downloading an update to a Steam game, it was kind of maxing out at around 85 or 86 megabytes per second, which is under a gigabit. I did have one download the other night hit a gigabit, but not beyond that, even though the computer I was using was connected to the faster portion of my home network. So it's going to be a matter of which services can support the bandwidth that you have available to download from them or upload to them. And it's really going to vary from service to service. This reminds me of when I went to college and we got our campus network going my senior year back in 1997 or so. And we were sharing kind of a T1 connection, which was a lot faster than what most people had at the time. And I was noticing that some websites were just as slow as they were on dial-up as they were on this T1 connection, just because of the resources that those servers had available. And the same will be true of this connection. But I could be downloading 1 gig from Steam and then 1 gig somewhere else and make use of the full amount of bandwidth that I have available. Now, you also have to factor in the speed of the devices on your local network. So for example, this is a speed test I ran on my iPhone, which was connecting via AC Wi-Fi. And as you can see here, the upload speeds are pretty good, but they're nowhere near what the potential of my connection is. And this is just a limitation of the Wi-Fi technology I have installed in the house. So at some point in the future, I'll start upgrading my Wi-Fi access points to faster technology, just so that I can try to get a little bit more out of this connection. But this does give you an idea as to some of the things you have to think about on your local network to take advantage of what you might have available to you. So your router is important, your network is important, your Wi-Fi is important to be able to achieve these speeds. Now, in order to get faster speeds in other portions of the house, I hooked up this 10 gigabit switch that we talked about in the last video in this series. And that allows my computer upstairs, my computers down here, and a few other spots around the house to get access to that 2 gigabit speed. But in order to get that speed, I've got to be wired in somewhere. And that's becoming a bit of an issue because I'm running cables all over the place now, and I think I might need to have somebody come in and properly install a few extra jacks in the places that I typically sit so that I can make the best use out of the speed that I now have. All good problems to have, but certainly something that will require a little bit more work and probably more videos down the line. Now, what's important to think about when we talk about speed is more than just the amount of data we can push over the pipe at any given time, which is what bandwidth is. We also have to factor in latency. How long does it take for that data to get to where it's going? And I ran some ping tests before the installation just to see what it would be like afterward. So this was a ping that I did from an Ethernet connected machine here out to Google. And this is probably going to a data center in New York City, not far from me. And we're getting about 20 milliseconds or so, give or take, when we were sending packets back and forth to that server. After the installation of the Gigabit Pro, I hit that same IP address again. And as you can see here, we're about half of what we were before. Not bad. Now, it doesn't mean that my latency is half everywhere, though. I think I cut my latency down by about 10 milliseconds, which in this case happens to be half. But it's not going to be light years faster because my data is still going to the same place it was going before, which is the Comcast head end that is located out in the middle of nowhere on a farm. It's on the right-hand side of the screen there. So we're still terminating essentially to the same place, but I'm picking up a little less latency because we're bypassing the coax to fiber nodes that we were hitting before. But once I hit the fiber, I'm on the same path my data was on when I was on coax, because you're basically bypassing the coax portion of the network and going right into their local network backbone. But because I'm kind of in Connecticut, not close to any of these data centers, there's still going to be some latency going from that head end out to a data center in Boston or New York or somewhere else. You just can't avoid that. So it's not going to be as fast as it would be if I was in a metro area, perhaps with this same service. The head end, by the way, again, is on a farm, and you would drive by it not even knowing it's there. This is the driveway to it, and there's the antenna in the background that picks up a lot of TV signals that they broadcast back out. Now, if I was in a data center, this is what it would look like ping-wise. So this is off the Shadow streaming server that I've been playing with. And again, this is in a data center in New York City. And when I run the same ping test here, you can see that it's about a millisecond. It's like almost instantaneous because they are so close to that Google server. Maybe they're even in the same building, who knows? So that just gives you an idea as to what the latency realistically will be on this connection, depending on how it's going to work in your particular area. All right, now I want to move on to some common questions that I know you'll likely have, and I'll take some more questions down in the comment stream and we'll do a follow-up video. Now, the first question is the most obvious one. What's my experience been so far? Am I happy? To say that I am happy is an understatement. I'm going to use the word ecstatically happy. This is a game changer for me because all of the aggravation and annoyance that I had in doing what I do for a living has involved that internet connection in the equipment closet over there. And once those guys were done, that burden was lifted, and immediately things just got better for me. So our upload process now is going to go from hours to minutes. It's an exponential increase in productivity and efficiency for us, and that means a lot of new things we can do with the time that we're picking up. So that alone is great. I've had days where I've been like really rushing to get through the wrap up because I want to have it up before 7 p.m. And I know it takes an hour at least to get it to YouTube, let alone all the processing that was going on. Now it's 30, 45 seconds and you got it. So it's just a whole paradigm change for me here. And I'm still trying to figure out all the different things we can do now with this super fast connection in the closet over there. Live streaming was also a big annoyance that I had because as many of you know, my upstream connection was so unreliable. I would often just disappear in the middle of a stream. We had very crazy stuff that would be going on constantly, even at minimal bandwidth. So before I was streaming at 720p at 2.5 megabits per second, and my connection couldn't even sustain that reliably. Now it just works great. We had a great stream over the weekend. It worked flawlessly for about 2 hours. It was just wonderful. And I was able to up the resolution to 1080p. We'll probably start playing around with higher bit rates as well. I think I was doing like 6 megabits per second on the 1080p portion. And then we were also doing our existing stream to Amazon. So I was pushing up, 12 or 14 megabits per second. And I still had, 1.9 gigabits left in the tank to do more with. So it's just really going to take some adjustment to go from having nothing to having more than I need. It's almost like, being a Cessna pilot and then being given an F-35. Like you just have to figure out what to do with all the added speed and performance that you have. So that was a very, very big uptick for me. Any other improvements? Well, what's interesting is because my signal is going directly back to the head end, there's nothing in between that needs to be powered. So if we have another power outage event like we had about a month and a half ago, where even though my power was back at the house, I was still reliant on the Comcast equipment on the poles being powered because that is where my signal essentially originated from. Now, because I'm a straight shot back, so long as I got power at the house, either through the power company or my generator, I will have an active connection because that head end is completely on backup power when the power is out there, and provided no trees fall down on the way to the head end, my connection is going to be active because we just need power here and at the head end and no other place in between. So that's going to be a big improvement, especially given how awful my local power company is. And you can see my video on that that I did a few weeks back when we were going through that power issue. Some of you asked about my TV service and is that changing? And at the moment it isn't, because this cable was brought in next to my coax cable that's already there. In fact, it runs right next to it. And if you go back to the fiber pole, you'll see some images of that. So for now, I'm going to keep the TV service intact because I can't get anything over the air where I live. So I'll keep the existing TV subscription. I might make some adjustments to it. And I'm using that 3-channel HD Home Run Prime as I've been using for many, many years now. So for the standpoint of TV watching in the house, nothing has changed there at all. But we'll look at what packages are out there and see if there's something worth switching to in the future. But to be honest, and this is crazy, I think it's less expensive to use the TV package I have now versus going to one of the internet-based streaming packages, at least for the stuff that we watch here. So for now, I'm just going to leave it as is, but we'll revisit that in the future. Now, the last question is an open question that I still have, which is IPv6. I heard from another Gigabit Pro customer who was having some trouble getting it to work with his Unify router, and they gave me 2 static IPv4s, and I'm supposed to get a block of IPv6s also, but I did not get them from Comcast yet. So I'm going to have to reach out to my project manager and ask her about those IPv6 addresses before I'm able to answer that question, unfortunately. So we'll have to keep an eye out for that. That'll be a future topic, I am sure. But right now, my connection is just on an IPv4 with no IPv6. But I do have 2 IPv4s, which is awesome as well. So life is good with the Gigabit Pro. It's awesome to have this amount of bandwidth, and we're going to be having a lot of fun trying to figure out different ways we can make use of all of it. And I'll share those experiences with you over the next couple of months as we get used to having something that actually works for once, and I'm very excited about that. Again, leave me some questions down below and I will try to answer them. Now, this week's wrap-up is being brought to you by all of you. And I first want to thank a bunch of super chatters who contributed this week. Brian Parker made a very generous gold level contribution, so I want to thank him for that. And by the way, Brian's got a used Mac Pro from a couple of years ago he's looking to get rid of. It's pretty well decked out. So leave a comment down below and I'll try to connect you with him if you're looking for a Mac Pro on the cheap. I also want to thank Carol, TW116, Weira, Thomas, Zam, and Chanflay98 for their contributions via Super Chat on our live streams this week. I also want to thank Joshua Cardona and Clark Westmoreland, who became new regular supporters of the channel through the YouTube membership program. So I want to thank everyone this week for their contributions and everyone who's been contributing on an ongoing basis, and all of you who watch on a regular basis too, because all of those things equal channel growth. And I greatly appreciate your support no matter how you choose to support the channel. And if you do want to support the channel financially, you can go to Lon.TV/support and make a monthly or a one-time contribution through my donor box page. We also support Patreon and, of course, the YouTube membership program, which you can join with the join button, which is right below this video. On the YouTube membership thing, you get some cool badges that appear next to your name in comments and live chat. So that's one neat little feature of it. And I want to thank everyone again for their support. So let's take a look at the weekend review. We had actually only 3 live streams, even though it looks like more. And the reason is that my connection was the worst it had ever been right before they brought in the new one. So we had some issues getting my Fire TV stick stream to stay up along with the iPad review that we were working on. But the good news is the one we did over the weekend with the new connection worked flawlessly for an hour and a half. We were playing around with the new Star Wars Squadrons with the HOTAS set up using the stick and throttle and the VR. It is an awesome game when you have that configuration. It's like being in an amusement park at Disney World or something. It's just a really fun experience, and I was playing it again last night. And then I took some footage from that live stream and gave a little commentary on the Extras channel about the game, so you can check that out on that channel over there, which is my secondary channel where I upload stuff like this. And that's what's fun about having this fast connection, is that I can do these videos more often because it doesn't take as long to get them up to you while we're still trying to get all the other stuff going. So it was really fun to be able to do a little bit extra this week. On the main channel, we had a review of the Amazon Fire TV Stick, the 2020 edition. We also had a review of the new iPad 8th generation and the Dell XPS 17. So we covered things on the low end of the market and things on the high end of the market. So that was fun. We did get in the new Google TV thing, by the way, so that's coming up this week. So this week, I hope to get to that Google TV along with the Apple Watch video I've been planning to do. Probably not so much a review of the Series 6, but more about where the watch is at and why I chose the Series 6 and what other options are out there for it. Kind of like a buying guide thing if you're looking for watches this holiday season. I also got in this really fun Raspberry Pi 4 case that looks like an NES, and we'll probably do a live stream putting it together and then upload a condensed version of that stream as a regular video. And what's cool is that you can put a SSD in the cartridge, so it's actually functional, which looks pretty fun. So we'll get to that a little bit later. We, of course, though, will be looking first at that new Chromecast with Google TV, which a lot of you have been writing in asking about. I did get one. I came in on Friday as the connection was getting set up, so we will do a full review of that this week. That is first priority before all the other stuff, so don't worry, we'll have something on that soon. And I'm still trying to slot in where I'm going to do my review of the Shadow streaming service. I think it's really cool, and we'll probably get to that very soon as well. So lots of stuff on the docket and more stuff coming in, because this is the fall where all the new stuff comes out. So I get super busy around this time of the year just trying to keep up with all of it. So we'll be slowly making changes to the studio because we can probably go to 4K and everything, but I can't do those changes until I get caught up on the work. So it'll likely be around the holiday season when we'll start playing around with new resolutions and set design and stuff. If you want to be notified whenever we go live or upload anything, you can click on that notification bell to get those notifications delivered to you directly. You can also find my other channels, including the Extras channel I referenced on the list that you see here. And also check out the Amazon shop link there, because I'm doing a lot more on Amazon with video and live streaming. And there's a follow button there too, so you can actually watch my live streams on Amazon. And every once in a while we may have some deals where while we're streaming you can get a good deal on something we're talking about. And that would be something you definitely want to click the follow button for on Amazon. You can engage with me through my very infrequent email list. We've got the Facebook group, which is well over 1,000 people now, a really fun place to be. And then we have the store, where I sell previously used items at a price lower than new. And I will be going through the pile of stuff over there very shortly, once I get caught up again this week. So be on the lookout for that. And we have an email list for the store. So every time I add something, I send out an email so you have a shot at getting those items. And there's only one of everything. So if you want to be notified whenever we do add something there, you can find it at Lon.TV/store alert. And that's going to do it for this week's weekly wrap-up and our review of the Gigabit Pro service. Again, let me know your comments down below, and we'll do a follow-up at some point in the near future as well. That's going to do it for now. Until next time, this is Lon. Thanks for watching, and I'm going to upload this super fast now. See you next week.
This channel is brought to you by the Lon.TV supporters, including gold level supporters Tom Albrecht, Chris Allegretta, Mike Patterson, and Bill Pomerantz. If you want to help the channel, you can by contributing as little as $1 a month. Head over to Lon.TV/support to learn more. And don't forget to subscribe. Visit Lon.TV/s.